Savior, source of life and truth and grace. Word made flesh, His birth upon us, our Lord.
This is an oral history of the Horner Lutheran Church, recorded in 1998. The history covers the period from World War I up until near the present day. Former pastor Mike Tamora conducted the interviews, and he introduced the interview participants.
Hey, we have Clarence Rhodes here. He's currently the president of Horner Church. He's been a member here since he was baptized. He was confirmed in 1931. Bob Miller, baptized in 1926, confirmed 1938. Sarah Leventree was baptized in 1928, also confirmed in 1938. Sarah Ogline, baptized in 1919, confirmed in 1933, and her brother, Harold Horner, was confirmed here in 1928. Harold, what's your first recollection of anything that happened here at Horner Church?
Well, I guess you'd have to say back to it wasn't the kindergarten, but it was the young people. And they had their class right here.
This would be a Sunday school class.
Sunday school class. It was back here in the corner until they remodeled, and then it was out in the vestibule in the corner.
That's where the elevator is now?
Yeah. And I don't know when it disappeared. After that, you got into a Sunday school class someplace, you know. And
I don't know anything unusual, but just Nettie Dietz, we always call her Miss Nettie. Boy, that's my first of the church, because the Sunday school class was right where we were sitting, and it was windows, the stained glass windows were put in 1925, and that's the year I was born. And when I was in this class, it was years shortly after that, Miss Nettie Dietz, she taught the Bible class, the Bible stories, with stained glass windows that's in the front of the church. And the Christ and the little children, Christ the shepherd. And these stories, this is what I remember, because this is what the first thing you learn when you were in Sunday school. And she was here for years. Anybody sitting here, she was their Sunday school teacher, or primary class. You were sitting here, those windows really look large.
They still look large, right?
They do, and they're beautiful when the sun's in the back. And we used to have church and Sunday school in the afternoons in the wintertime. This was back, I guess, up until we were pretty well grown, but we had church and Sunday school when the three churches were one parish.
Meaning Stoystown.
Hopkins, and Horners. As one parish, why we had afternoon Sunday school and church. And when the afternoon sun comes in at these windows, they're really beautiful. With Miss Nettie Dietz, if there's anybody that was close to being an angel, it was her, to my mind.
Well, her sister taught Sunday school for years and years too, but she taught a little older children. I don't know what age we were when we had her then, but I thought she was a wonderful teacher too.
she taught the True Blue Bible class.
Kind of the older teenagers, weren't they?
It was over in the choir, and that was for I don't know how many years.
And what was her name?
Elizabeth,
Lizzie Lore.
Lizzie Lore.
But she was originally a Dietz. She was a sister of Nettie Dietz.
When you got too big for over there, we moved back there in the corner.
Well, we were in here a while too, weren't we, Sarah?
I think.
That was later.
Yeah.
Summertime, our Sunday school met out there where the elevator is now, and organ. I guess that they used it in church before they got the
It used to
piano.
be in here before the piano.
An old pump organ. She'd play songs for us to sing in Sunday school, like Jesus Loves Me and I Want to Be a Sunbeam and some of those songs.
Well, she played the organ until he got a piano. For everything.
Then who played?
I don't know. Thelma Barnett was in
Oh,
for
yes,
that.
Thelma played some.
Annie and Brian, Annie and Laura.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know who all of
Mrs. Irv Most
it. Yeah.
later.
And then these two sisters' niece was our Sunday school teacher. Was
Yeah.
that still the True Blue Bible class? I guess it was still. But when,
It could have been.
when Mrs. Lohr quit, then Ethel Mossgrave was our teacher then, and her maiden name was Dietz too.
This age, of Clarence, and Sarah, and Harold, they was True Blue Bible class started in your time, Harold?
Before that. Yeah.
So True Blue Bible class that started years back.
Oh, yeah, it started before that. There was some other class here we was in for so long, and then you got into that.
And then when you got married, you got out of it.
And then you got out of it.
And you had your men's class and your women's class.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Mary Mountain Road, she had the second class.
Yes.
You know?
Well, I had Mary Beth too.
She had it for years. I don't know if she didn't have the second class even after she was married.
I
But
don't
these
recall.
are times that during the war. and
No, I
things like
don't
that,
think she
Well-
did. I don't think she did after she was married.
Think not.
No,
I don't
She was
remember.
married too many years before I was.
she was rather old.
Mm-hmm.
What was a True Blue Bible class like? What did you do in the class?
And monthly meetings, they can tell you. Monthly meetings with the homes of the members of the class.
And what did you do at these monthly meetings?
We had a Christian program, had a lesson of scripture reading, song singing.
Refreshments.
Well, you forgot to speak up. I just remember a little of it.
Well, it was a social event.
Your neighbor did.
Yes, it was a social event that
The kids got together.
yeah, it was just something to get together.
There was a good many of them.
Different ones got married in this class.
Yeah.
Well, then later on, I don't know, when is that we had the Luther League then, with the young people.
Oh, we had Light Brigade before that.
Huh? I remember that.
The Light Brigade, we met while the women were meeting, the Women's Missionary Society.
I know when I was in the service, I usually got a letter from the True Blue Bible class each month. Each one write a little bit into this, and they'd send me a letter each month when I was in the service. I know of answering these letters during the time. I was in Fort Meade, Maryland, and I was in Fort McClellan, Alabama, and I was over in Korea. So this was 45, 40 to 47. And I usually got a letter from the True Blue Bible class each month. That everybody write a little bit or something. It would be just all over so-and-so, putting kind your name, you know. But I always got something. I think this is something they did for the servicemen at the time, through the class.
You probably look forward to it.
Yes, you did. You know, you look for anything that came from your roots, you know. And that's, you did. You remember these things that this happened.
The True Blue Bible class used to in the summertime, when it stayed daylight real long, usually in June, we'd have a hilltop meeting. we grew up on the hill. I remember over on the Maramanda's farm, up on the hill we'd go, and we'd have a program up there. Take our songbooks along, had a religious program, you know.
The same way on the winter farm.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's a hill to get up. Really see it.
And we usually have a wiener roast afterward.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, but just like myself, I haven't been up that hill for years.
I wasn't either.
I don't think you can get up anymore. It's too grown up now, you can't get up.
We used to drive up. You zigzag back and forth long enough, you could get up over, but, I know when we used to have our Sunday school picnics out in the grove that the Storytown had, one time, some of these older women would like to went up, but they said they couldn't get up. So my brother was daredevil enough to get his station wagon and take a whole load up. And I remember my uncle said, "Uh-oh, Lordy, you watch her, you're gonna turn her over." And this thing was leaning, they were going up. And he took a whole load of women up there to be able to look out over. You can see the corn home, and Dan, what can't you see up there?
You can see out this 7-mile stretch.
Yeah. You can see for about
Yeah.
15 miles of there, can't you?
What do you remember about some of the social activities at the church?
Oh, every summer we had a festival.
Is that the ice cream festival?
Well, oh no, we had chicken suppers.
How do you know? Is that what-
No, here.
Out here in front of the church.
Somebody strung up lights out there in the front, and we had tables out there, and I remember one time it rained, and then we brought some tables in the church here in the
Ice
aisle.
cream festival.
Tell us some more about it.
Well, they cooked out there in that little room on oil stoves and things, and I know we served out of that window. Some of the young women would be the waitresses and baked pies and different things to serve.
Well, that was customary of every country church had a festival.
Yeah.
I mean, then they had a cakewalk,
Had a cakewalk every
and
time.
a cake that you had to guess what was in it. And Mrs. Artlow always baked that cake.
Do you remember some of the things she used to put inside the cake?
I never won the cake, so I don't know.
Now, there were picnic groves and other places. Did you always have the festival out here at the church, or did you move it around?
Festival was there, but the picnic grove was over there back our house in that woods.
That was before I was born. He
That was a long
remembered a
time.
little bit.
I remember, and that's all I was gonna do about that. But I know they'd go up there and, horse and wagon and up there.
We had
Some
some
of
of,
the big chestnut trees up there, that is worth a lot of things. Then after that, the picnic grove went over to Ralston there in the corner.
we had some of the dishes from the picnic at home. And even they had tin cups, you know, about this deep, that they served the coffee in. And we still had some of those when we had sale a few years ago that we sold.
That was customary of all churches at that time to have a social, a picnic, because it was the center of amusement, and it wasn't just
It was a time to get together.
Fellowship.
It wasn't just for Horner congregation, I mean, it was for the community. You went to everybody's picnic or social.
Every church had a picnic.
Yeah, and I mean, it was, well,
It was big time when we were kids.
Well, they wanted you to come, they wanted your money.
It was a fundraising event.
Yeah, a little bit so, yeah.
I mean, very seldom, I mean, the picnics were usually Saturday, and then
Yep.
the social would be some evening in the summer, and
Well, now for about 30 years, we've been having picnic at Bob Miller's grove. Right, Bob?
Yes, that started in 1970,
Well, then
up to the present time.
I'm sorry. In between there, then we had chicken barbecues out here at the Grove. Did it belong to the
Supposed to.
parish or
Grace Church.
just to
No,
Grace, strictly,
No, it was,
it was strictly
Grace.
Grace's
Grace.
church, but we have chicken barbecues annually out there, and we get quite a crowd there too, but this was in later years then. I don't know when they stopped, a number of years ago.
I think they must have stopped in the early 60s. But that was an all-day event.
Yes,
Didn't the ladies have to clean the chickens? And
I never helped clean any of the chickens.
Well, yeah, they had to go over, they bought the chickens and halves, you know.
they made the potato salad,
Yes.
they made the baked beans.
Baked goods, I don't know what all that
Goods,
is.
right. And then the men of the church actually did the barbecuing of the chickens.
The young folks did that. Like I say, Jim Miller would know more about this than us fellows sitting here because it was in his younger days. Well, when I started, as I can remember, if a pastor walked in the church with a robe on, half the congregation went out the door.
Well, I think at that time, Bob, no, we just didn't have, the minister never wore a robe. Usually it was just a suit, 'cause I know we had a supply pastor come one time, and he asked me where he changed to his robe, and I said, we do not wear a robe in this church. And I mean, and I can't remember, I will not say when that became customary.
Did the choir wear robes?
No. I think at that time we couldn't afford robes.
That's true.
I think Reverend Forrester might be one of the first ones that wore a robe.
This is the way times change. At that time, the rope was an issue, because we had whole families get up and walk out. And
Why do you
when you're
think-
younger, you remember these things, you know. When you're older, you just kind of look older, but you're young, it's kind of a shock to see people get up and walk out of church. Then you wonder why they went out, because no one said anything, then later, it is because the pastor walked in with a robe on.
It's just a matter of tradition that a robe was not worn here,
That's right.
and that people believed in the tradition that had been established.
And when we always knelt for the opening of the communion service at that time. And that's how it's changed. You don't kneel today. But we always knelt for the opening of the communion service.
You just knelt on the floor. You didn't have any kneelers or
No.
anything like that.
Well,
Not on the floor.
there was a time that we had our preparatory service in the, probably Friday night before we had communion. That was a special service to
That
go,
was always before communion.
yeah.
And this was when you had communion maybe 4 or 5 times a year?
4
Yes.
times a year.
We always had a bigger congregation at that time. I mean, a larger amount of people came for those services.
What were those times? When did they have the communion services? Any particular times?
Probably quarterly, I would just
I
assume.
Yeah, I won't say
I
when,
don't remember either.
but it was 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Well, can I ask you about World War II and how that affected the church, and if you did anything different here during World War II?
I took our minister. That was in World War II, wasn't
Yes.
it?
You have to be a chaplain.
And,
resigned to be a
Yes.
chaplain.
It was his choice, yes, but I think we were all pretty sad when he left too, because we had lost ministers all along, but then when you listen to for some reason is that, like that, why it's a little different. You know, you have a little different feeling about them leaving to go to a service, and like if they're just moving on to a different church.
And who was this pastor that resigned to become a chaplain?
The Reverend Foltz.
See, he's the first pastor I remember.
Well, he
Reverend Foltz.
gave us our confirmation.
Yes. And he's the first pastor I remember. And then,
He's the first one I remember.
all my young years, because it was just right after that I left my service. So, I didn't know another pastor, really.
I can't even recall who followed him. Do you?
Forster, Reverend Forster.
The Forster followed.
Mhm. We had our confirmation classes over there in the first couple pews, first pew maybe, on a Saturday afternoon we came. I don't know when the rest of you.
I can't recall.
Or
whether
it was Sunday after
church.
After Sunday afternoon church. When I had Sunday afternoon church, we had the class. And that was just in the front pew there. So, you and I were the same year, 1938.
Well, if he left in 41, he must have left as soon as,
Not in 41, he didn't.
well, that's what it has here, but I can't see that either because war wasn't declared till December of 41. Well, then Forster came in 42, so maybe Foltz, maybe that was his last full year or something, but I don't think he left till,
But I think years ago, weddings were always performed in the home or else the parsonage.
Yeah, I think we had earlier years had weddings in the church.
Because I know my grandparents were married in Friedensburg, a Lutheran parsonage.
And our parents were married in Stoystown in the parsonage.
When did church weddings start happening around here?
I was married in Stoystown Church.
But there wasn't big weddings at that time, even church weddings. It was mostly just usually a family.
there was more important things to make your money in those days.
The first wedding I can remember is Kate and Dave. The bed.
And there was nobody here,
But you,
just,
If I remember correctly, weren't they married about 8 o'clock in the morning? Then there was a reception.
I mean, the mother had prepared breakfast for the minister, his wife, and Dave's parents, and Elaine and I. That was Dave's sister. It was just the 6 of us sat there waiting here at 8 o'clock in the morning.
that was Reverend Foltz, wasn't it?
Yes.
What about funerals? Church funerals, were funerals done in the church much, or?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
The funerals were always.
because that seems to have been a custom that's changed. There's they're somewhat less common now.
There wasn't funeral homes at that time.
The body was at the house.
The body was even prepared at the house. And that's just before I could learn, but I've been told that the body never left the house till it came to the
Very
church.
seldom left the house.
They never left the house till it came to the church. But I guess back in those days, it was always church funeral.
Yeah,
I don't think there was any question it was a church funeral.
church funeral, that was in there.
But the viewing was always at the home.
And like Sarah said, the viewing was at home.
Did they have designated viewing times, or just when friends and family wanted to gather, they were received at the home of
It seemed
the
to me
individual?
like they came most any time, because when they changed over, I often thought that was for the better, because they didn't come way late in the evenings and stuff then, you know, but,
The family had a little time to get something to eat.
Well, there was a time when somebody died, they'd all hurry in there, somehow a horse and buggy, and get the horses fed, and then they'd even get something to eat. They made sure of that. Yeah.
Carol, tell them about when somebody would pass away, the ringing, tolling of the bell and that.
Well, the people knew everybody, knew who was sick and who wasn't. And if they died, they'd call my grandfather. Somehow they'd call. He'd get out here and ring the bell for a little while and then toll it. And everybody knew who it was that they were tolling, you know, they knew who it was at that time.
You rang it as many times as the person was years old.
Yep. It'd ring his age. And that went on a long time. Anything else happened, that should have been taken care of. We chase him out here to toll the bell. When you told the bell, you knew there was something wrong someplace.
I remember my dad telling the story when your barn burnt,
Mm-hmm.
and my grandfather was at the site as soon as,
He was here at the barn before my dad got out of bed.
right.
I don't know how he found it out, but
Probably saw it.
He saw the flat in the sky.
we looked way over there. He got here before dad got out of bed on horseback.
My dad never said a word to me about that. All I know is what Harold told me.
Well,
And we talked to Lizzie and Nettie Dees. Their father was killed
yeah.
when they communied or members of the church were cutting logs to rebuild the barn that we just spoke of. And he was walking through the woods and a limb fell down and was killed.
Do you remember what years this has been, Harold?
Yeah. I know I was around, but I didn't see it.
1950.
1915 the barn was built.
And the stone in the cemetery would tell what,
And then Franklin was killed, yeah.
yes, when he was killed, that was
Right
his time.
inside the first gate up here.
Yeah.
There was something that I wanted to ask about too, and probably Sarah Leventry and Sarah Oglin, you helped to organize these children's services that were held in June, where the children practiced
We had committees that would prepare it.
would practice for weeks.
Yeah.
Children's services were one of the.
Children's Day.
Way back.
Yes.
They went way back.
The beginning of June we had it.
And it was held Sunday evening,
Yeah, I think.
and the church was filled with mock orange
Oh,
and
yes.
different flowers.
Roses, and if we didn't have any, we'd go out and pick daisies and bring them in.
And each Sunday school class of children participated by having different speaking parts and songs that they sang.
I think every child had.
Yes, every child was in it.
Pretty well so, yeah.
Now, I understand in earlier days, there wasn't any vacation Bible school, and this kind
No.
served kind of the same purpose.
Pastor Rick started that here, but we cooperated with Stoystown. I think it was more like the Forbes area school district. And I know we met sometimes in the Lutheran Church in Stoystown, and sometimes we met down at the old grade school in Cantner. We had a lot of children when we had it down there. I remember one time we had Christmas service, and it was winter, and some people didn't get home. Bob's family didn't get home till almost morning because the road was drifted out here.
Yeah, I remember, you couldn't get out toward Lyra's there. And we went down, I asked, Barnett's, Sarah Barnett's home, up around that way. Then we ended up getting stuck below the barn out here where Lyra's is. Was Samuel Miller lived there then. And Dave's dad, my uncle, Warwick, we were all stuck there together. So he goes out, gets Grant Snyder the horses, and they start with one hook to one car, and they use that car to open the road with everybody following it. The horse is there. And Grant Snyder takes my uncle, my aunt, her down to where they lived, and that was where David Keaton's the farm was. With the 14 horses out of the car. That's how they opened the road to get through. Yep.
I wonder if any of you remember World War I or the Depression and how that affected the church and how things might have been different during the Depression at all?
I remember the Depression, but I don't remember.
Not World War One.
I don't either. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I was born in 1918 and it was over. But I sure remember the Depression,
In the 30s.
and that's when the church was the members were so determined that they'd meet their benevolence. And they did.
Well, at the end of the floor is when the flu was, the end of the war. That's when the flu was so bad.
The Spanish influenza?
Yeah.
Do you remember what that was like?
Well, I don't know, but it's really killing a lot of people. That's when Larry Miller's grandfather died. He was in flu, yeah. Dwight's dad. Well, my dad worked at Johnner's and didn't get it. I don't know what happened to him. But that was,
I just remember seeing the marker over there not long ago, the man, Miller, was Margaret's grandfather,
yeah,
Dwight's father,
yeah.
and the man. And he was born in 1886. I think he was 32 years old at the time when he died.
When he lived out there, Frank gave that Snyder place to him. He built that for the land.
Do you remember any stories about the Depression or what people had to do to keep up their benevolence? Or?
Anybody wanted to meet to out here and hunt a groundhog if they could find one.
I know at that time, I have no idea what the minister was paid, but I know he had certain places he went, he picked his potatoes helped to pick potatoes for his potatoes, and he went someplace else and had an orchard, he picked apples for his winter supply of apples. And I think an awful lot of people, when they butchered, took him some sausage and a ham or whatever they had.
Well, there during the Depression, the strike was on then too. You had to be careful out here in the fields walking around or with your horses because they'd get into groundhog holes. They was digging groundhogs every day. That's where they got their meat. 9 chances out of 10 they'd find them and it was a skunk instead of a groundhog.
Being a farming community, though, most people were pretty self-sufficient during the Depression because they had their own vegetables,
Yes.
and fruit, and crops to.
It was just like the people in Ralph there, whatever, they had nothing to fall back on.
They were out picking berries,
Yeah.
cherries. They'd come and pick cherries, 4 cherries. I know Dad had a fellow named John Coolidge. Maybe you remember him.
No.
Well, he was an old fellow that lived up alongside the railroad siding up there at Robin.
The name sounds familiar, but I
And,
can't.
He'd come out, Dad gave him chickens, things like that. And he dug ditches. And he dug a lot of field ditches. Put the old stone ditches in, you know, at the time.
Oh, yeah, that's what you had.
They built the stone ditches.
You couldn't afford to buy tile.
Someone had the money for tile. They built stone ditches. That's what was going through the Depression. The farmers in this area more or less kept Ralston going, but these fellows were willing to work. That's where you got your potato pickers. Things like that, you got a lot of mining towns.
I used to pick potatoes too, Paul, but I don't remember if it was in Depression time or when it was.
Well, it probably was followed up after the Depression, because that's where a lot of it got started. Was
I never picked too many, but I picked potatoes.
Did you pick potatoes for potatoes?
Well, I think what we picked was after they took their crop, we went over and, was we a gleaner or what would you call it? We went over and picked it. We did the same thing for peas and different things when they had the canning factory in Somerset, you know, and the farmers so used to go out to Snyder's and pick peas all the time. After they would harvest them for the factory, then they left their field open to anybody that wanted to come in and
What can you tell us about the other stained glass windows? You talked a little bit about the two in front and the Bible stories that you were told. What about the acquisition of the other stained glass windows?
Well, most of your stained glass windows were
donated by
by family part. Just like Sarah. And you're different families. You'll find the families of the church would,
You find the names on there, and that's the people who bought them probably, mostly.
yeah, and some will get the memory of some
Was
people.
that done all at one time, or?
As I understand, yes.
Yes.
That's right there, that they were all put in at the same time.
The window out in the vestibule has the date.
That was put in whenever we got rid of the stoves up here and so on. And that remodeling was done there in the 20s.
That's when the pews and the older front furniture were changed. But that's the year I was born, so you know, I don't remember that.
You didn't help. You didn't help.
No.
And then right after that, the synod met here at Horner Church, the whole synod. And I remember some of the men stayed at Grandma Horner's.
Yeah.
They stayed a couple nights. I don't know how many days it lasted. And talking about when we put the basement in, I was married when the church was up on the posts.
It was sitting on Cribby.
Back in 49, October of 49, that was.
So then you had a church wedding?
Yes, I had a church wedding, a very small one.
Was it any particular person's job to toll the bell, and how did that work?
Sexton. And my grandfather was sexton for I don't know how many years, and his father, and my father.
And the sexton being the caretaker of the church?
Well, no point, yeah, they didn't clean it, but they kept, well, they had lit the lights, there was, I don't know how many hundred lights in here. And light them, keep fire, and ring the bell.
Furnished the coal. Did he furnish the coal?
Furnish the coal, furnish the wood. Didn't know other way to do it, just steal it.
How did somebody become sexton?
Well,
You live close to the church, I think.
you coax somebody finally to do it.
Well, I think it, just like Sarah said, it was the person closest to church,
Yeah.
and it just seemed, it went with the family.
No, that was my great grandfather, I don't know anymore, before that, but my grandfather and my dad.
Dad used to come at 4 o'clock on Sunday morning so it would be warm till service time.
You think that's how the church got its name,
What?
Horner's Lutheran Church?
Well, it's,
Property.
Porter's, furnished the ground,
Yes, but
and it was here,
it was here.
yeah.
But, just like you say, your grandfather, your great-grandfather,
Yeah.
your father, all saw that in the church.
They all had the church.
Was
I never
this,
did figure out how to lift the chandelier.
Did what, Harold?
I never figured out how to lift that chandelier.
Wasn't that on a boy?
It had to be.
Wow.
You couldn't have crawled up there.
Does anybody remember that chandelier? I do not.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Can you describe it for us, what it looked like?
Well, it was, I don't know how many lamps was in that thing. And I'd say it was about, at least 5 feet long, hanging down there, maybe more. Full of,
Kerosene lamp.
kerosene lamps all around it in there.
What, a dozen, 20, 30?
Well, I'd say maybe 30, 40. It was pretty big around. And then there was lights over the building yet.
It was just back in 1984 that you could still see the marks up there. When we had the church done over in 84, it was, marks were taken out. But you could still see where that round chandelier had been.
Right up there is where it was. About in the middle of the ceiling.
Well, there's a little hole up there in the ceiling yet.
That's about it.
That was something with that chandelier. It was kerosene, and the way I understood, it was on a roof, maybe a couple of roofs, I don't know.
It had to be to let it down so you could get to it.
Yeah. You lit it, and it was pulled up to clear people's heads.
And the step ladder they used to that, the step never home yet.
No kidding.
Yeah. It was only about 4 feet high.
That was the step ladder.
The step ladder, you used to do that.
was that sexton's position voluntary or was it a paid position?
Well, I don't know if he got paid anything or not.
I think it was a paid, but it was pretty much a token.
It was paid a little bit, I think, but then he furnished the coal and wood and,
I think it was,
Probably the kerosene.
if I can remember in the report of the church, it was sectioned so much. But I think it was more a token payment than it was.
yeah, it wasn't, nothing exciting. Say the way it was, what did she get, $5 for the communion?
I didn't know she ever got anything.
I think that was for a year.
I think every year, yeah.
I just found that out.
That wouldn't have even bought the sugar for the grape juice, would it?
Well, it might have in those days.
Well, that's true, it might have.
And the ladies got together. We had committees who would clean the church.
Yeah, you took your turn. There was nobody hired to do
No,
that.
no,
Well, you talked about having a pump organ.
yes.
It was way back.
You know, we had a member, Lawrence Skinner. Harold and I just were talking about this. This man was hard hearing, and actually he was what we call deaf. And he could play that pump organ and really do a good job of it. And at different times, they'd have special music for him. And I remember just, was small, seeing Lawrence Skinner playing the pump organ.
Didn't he compose a hymn?
And
I think he did.
we still sing that sometimes. The choir sings it, or sometimes we print it out that everyone has a copy of it that we sing. But he did. written the music and the words.
I can't think what the name, well, you know.
I don't know what the name of it is.
And this man was actually deaf. But he could, how he played that organ, none of us here know. But this is what we can remember of these things.
I think he went to music school at one time in his early years.
Was he always deaf? That you
I don't know.
As long as I can remember.
As long as I can remember.
He
Going
had,
around playing the organ.
he had the Ginner greenhouse out on 30, beyond the rays of garages now. And he was a member of this church all those years, and we took, each one took a week. Someone in the congregation would take his meals to make sure he had something to eat, because he was always so busy with these greenhouses. And
Well, he lived alone too.
yes, he lived alone, and he slept right in his boiler room, what you call, in beside his big stove that he had his greenhouse eat with. That's where he slept. And he mostly ate right in the greenhouse. Because he didn't stop to eat, as I remember. When I got older, I knew anything about his greenhouse. And most of the congregation would buy plants from him because this was his livelihood. And he always donated flowers for the altar. He always had flowers for the altar.
If you were all talking to somebody who'd never come to the church and they were considering coming in here to see what it was like, what would you tell them? What's a good reason to come to this church and see if you like it?
A close-knit congregation, I'd say. I think we have a very close-knit congregation, and we readily accept anyone that would want to come in.
I think we all ought to make a point to talk to the people that are just new coming. Because Lutherans aren't noticed for that, you know. The Lutherans are noticed for the cold side.
Well, some of our newer members, though, have expressed their opinion that we are friendly.
Yeah,
We are a friendly congregation.
I think we try to do more than we used to. Because if we weren't officially introduced to somebody, we didn't talk to them, did we? We had to be introduced.
I don't think it's that way anymore.
No.
No. But we know people don't neighbor like they did, but still, I think through the church is the only contact people have.
And speaking of offering a helping hand, I think our congregation does that. If they know that, are aware of somebody's need, I think that they're all willing to lend a hand.
I once heard that there were horse sheds out here by the parking lot.
From the end of the walk here down, there was 10 stalls in there.
So how was it determined whether you got to park your horse in the shed or you had to leave it out on the road?
Well, I think whoever had those sheds down there, he built it.
Oh, each
I think each one had to,
person had to build their own shed.
the first one up, the first place up there was a coal house, and where they kept the coal and material, tools for the cemetery. Then the first one was a preacher's stall. And then it kept going down. John Rhodes and John Stuft and Christ's, Ginners, Royal Rhodeses was in there someplace.
Oh, my grandfather had one, Dave.
Oh, yes. I don't know, there was 9 or 10 stalls in there.
So each individual had to build their own stall.
Yeah, and over along the cemetery is where the hitch rack was.
Oh,
That,
so how many horses would happen to be here on a Sunday, do you think?
well, not too many.
Why do you keep coming back every Sunday, most Sundays?
Well, this is my church. And I belonged here all my life, and why shouldn't I? I'm within traveling distance.